I was pretty lonely in my procurement career at two specific stages, and I don't think it's something that we talk about enough, because actually there are some specific parameters to being in procurement that make it very susceptible to loneliness. And I want to talk about those today, and I want to be open with you about those, because I think it's something that if more people opened up, maybe we'd be able to help each other more. And I've got some tips and advice for that coming up. So the first time was actually when I made the transition from purchasing role. I was head of purchasing in a role, and then I moved into my first ever procurement role. And at the time, I didn't understand the difference between purchasing and procurement. And the truth is, when you're in a buying or a direct purchasing role, you have a direct control. Whereas when you move into a procurement role, you realize that you're only as effective as the influence you have. And in procurement, in indirect procurement, you're reliant on stakeholders doing the right thing, and you're therefore treading quite a lonely furrow. And I think because I hadn't realized or appreciated the jump in terms of the influence that I needed to build, and the fact that actually it was quite a lonely task to do, that I kind of almost went into myself. I started to doubt myself, and it was that classic case of imposter syndrome taking over. And one of the reasons in procurement imposter syndrome is particularly prevalent is because we're tending to deal with stakeholders who, let's be frank, would sometimes rather we didn't exist. Why would they prefer we didn't exist? Because fundamentally everyone thinks they know how to buy, and most stakeholders don't want to be told how to do things. They want to just do things, get on with things, and they think they're the experts, and therefore they should be just allowed to get on with doing what they should be doing, which is to build sales, to drive marketing, to build the technology stack, etc. They don't want procurement involved. So immediately, procurement individuals are almost can feel ostracized. We feel like we have to fight for our way in. Another reason that procurement can feel particularly lonely and why imposter syndrome is so prevalent is because we're very often dealing with subject matter experts. Now, I remember going into my first procurement role in 2013, 2014, where I was working with the marketing teams, and the marketing teams were absolute experts when it came to things like point of sale, when it came to creative agencies, when it came to things like asset management, all things that I had to learn about. Now, I wasn't stupid, I wasn't daft, I knew the basics of what those things were, but I always felt like the stakeholders I was dealing with had so much more expertise than I did in the areas that they were talking about. I almost felt like, why am I even here? Like, what is the point? Because they know so much more than me. What value can I add? The truth is as well, working in that team when I joined, there was an element of competitiveness within the procurement team. So I don't know whether you've ever been in that situation whereby you're almost feeling like you're having to justify your existence, and not just the existence of your team, but your existence amongst your peers. You know that whole thing of having savings trackers and targets, and you can see that guy who's working in supply chain procurement, who's able to deliver all these massive OPEX savings because the category is set up for them to do that. And I remember feeling like I always had to compete in that way, but also there was almost that competitive edge that made you feel a little bit lonely at the same time. It didn't really feel like a full team environment. Looking back, that was the shaping of me, that was the making of me. In many ways, those challenges were what really helped me to build my soft skills, my stakeholder influence, me realize that I had to almost relearn some of the things that had got me to where I was at that stage in my career in direct buying were no longer that useful when it came to indirect procurement. So I almost had to fast track myself by reading lots of books, going online, finding out things about how to deal with stakeholders and building my own processes. One of the tipping points for me, and I say tipping points, one of the times when I actually managed to feel less alone was actually getting myself to a conference. It was actually the ProcureCon conference in 2013, where I realized that I wasn't alone, that many of the challenges that I was facing in the business I worked in were actually challenges that many procurement professionals in all sorts of industries were also facing, because by just going to some talks, going to some presentations, meeting other procurement individuals, I realised that I wasn't alone in the feelings I had. I want to have a bit of a focus on the second time that I felt lonely though, and this could be really relevant and I can definitely help you here. And that is when I joined my last role as head of procurement in a financial services sector. It was a brilliant business. Loved working within it. I reported to the CFO, but I was brought in a head of procurement role, but as the lone procurement wolf. So I use that word sparingly, but what I mean by that is I really had to make a name for myself. I really had to build the team from scratch. It was just me for the first year. Now, when you add in the fact that that was COVID times, so it was early 2020s, there was a lot of working from home. In fact, I don't think I actually met anyone in person for about 8 months. That exacerbated it. But I still think the fact that I was in a procurement career, but knew my stuff, at that point I was confident. I knew what procurement should be doing. I knew how to build effective stakeholder relationships. But ultimately, I was the only person with the procurement lens in that business. Now, when you work even in small, medium-sized businesses, they'll tend to have teams. There'll be HR teams, there'll be marketing teams. I was naturally placed in the finance team, but you'll find you're kind of out of sync with the objectives of most of the rest of the finance team. I've always termed procurement as almost like the republic of procurement. You are treading your own path a lot of the time. You're quite often placed in a finance function, but in reality, the things that they talk about are not that relatable to procurement. Very often I felt in my finance team meetings that when it was coming to like the head of treasury, for example, talking, it was all going over my head. So again, you kind of feel a little bit, maybe imposter syndrome, a little bit like, oh, maybe I don't belong here. Now, my passion for procurement was there, it was strong at that point, and I knew what I was doing, so perhaps I had more confidence to get through that. But I still remember thinking, if only I had a network to reach out to, if only there was some people outside of the business I worked in that I could draw on for support, that I could ask questions, even I could just have a bit of a rant with. And being honest, that's why I started to write online, because it became an outlet for some of the things that I was thinking about. I am going to take a little bit of a walk and I'm going to tell you about some of the things that you can do to help and how I could help you. But before I do, I just want to show you this lovely area that I've just chosen to sit down and have a coffee in. So here's where I used to come and sit when I was feeling lonely and maybe decompress and maybe escape a little bit from the imposter syndrome, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I advise you find that spot wherever you live where you can just come and sit and just be at peace for a few seconds. So I mentioned at the start of this video how a real turning point for me was attending a conference. It was a Procure conference, I remember it in Amsterdam, and I managed to build some real connection with 2 or 3 people there that made me feel like, okay, I'm not alone. And I do think that in the world where there's so many online events, so many resources that we think we can access online, that getting to in-person events makes all the difference. And by the way, I recorded a video here on how to get the best out of conferences and events, because I know it's something that some of you might feel nervous about, and if you're someone who does, that video is definitely for you. I think we're living in an intimacy vacuum, and that is being exacerbated by artificial intelligence. What's happening is, as all communication, all forms of communication are being outsourced to AI, so think about all the chat bots that have replaced human phone calls, all the fact that everything is now communicated through Slack, through Teams messages. You're losing that power of a proper conversation. As the world becomes more disconnected, it's more important than ever that we find communities, safe spaces where we can have genuine, vulnerable conversations. So I've built the community that I wish, frankly, I'd been able to have 10 years ago, and it's called Procurement Unplugged. I've put a link in the comments, it's the top comment. There's already more than 300 people in there having real conversations, helping each other out with challenges, even just having the odd rant. There's a Q&A session that I run, there's masterclasses, there's guest experts, but the real power of that isn't what's inside, it isn't all the tools and templates that I've dropped inside, it's the fact that it's a safe space for you to go to feel a part of, whereby you may not feel you have the same ability to do that in your organisation, because there's all sorts of things that you're worried about. You're worried about how you're perceived, you're worried about how people are going to view you if you need help. You can just access a really good community of experts there. And I think that it's the reason why communities are being built, not just in procurement, but in general, because more and more people are realising that they need real human connection. Drop me a line in the comments, have a look at the community. It's a wait list, but there are a number of opportunities to join during the year, and I'm hoping that that will really help. As I said, it's a community I wish I had 10 years ago, and I would be delighted to see you inside.